one joke collapsed a popular YouTube podcast? Popular YouTube podcasts have collapsed for less. Not speaking from any experience, I wouldn't know anything about podcasts, but this sounds really interesting. Go subscribe to Sunny V2, guys. We're going to judge this really hard.
On episode 351 of the Impulsive podcast,
I love Bobby Lee
made one single joke which completely wrecked the relationship between the three hosts, Logan, Mike, and most notably George.
So I've been seeing George on Twitter recently, maybe a couple months ago, I don't really know, but talking about how he's going to talk about his side of the story soon and stuff. I guess that's what this is about, because I really didn't know anything about this. I love Bobby Lee, not a huge fan of Logan Paul, not a huge fan of Mike. I don't really like George much, to be honest, either. They're just not my cup of tea. I like Bobby Lee, though. He's a funny dude. Real comedian.
Really mad? Is he really mad?
Oh, we have beef with a guy? I don't know. No. I didn't do anything wrong.
For context, Logan and Mike created the podcast back in late 2018, and it's safe to say that these two have always had excellent chemistry. Their personalities work well together, they seem to be pretty good friends, and generally speaking, they exhibit a similar level of status. Keeping a permanent third host, on the other hand, has proven much more difficult.
All of them have been
the first 150 episodes featured a third host named Spencer, who eventually left the podcast to move to Hawaii, after which the role went to Logan's childhood friend Mac, who'd then also leave after getting into a fight with Mike over their difference in interests. On episode 209...
Interesting, dude. I just can't imagine taking anything that seriously. At all. I'm just not a serious guy, I guess. Peter, come on, quit digging around in the box. Quit digging around in the box. We gotta watch this podcast. Come on, baby. Girl. The reason I think I get along so well with people, and I have so much patience with people, is because I have these little dogs, and I've had only little small dogs for a long time, and I love them, and they do a lot wrong. They're always barking at me, and I scream at them, and they don't even look. They're not even remotely afraid of me at all. And they should be, because I'm going to turn them into soup one day.
George was introduced as a more emotional counterpart to Logan and Mike, as he had a reputation for wearing his heart on his sleeve, while Logan and Mike were almost the exact opposite. In addition to this, George was a devout Christian, with discussion about his own spirituality, adding another layer of contrast to what had previously been a non-religious show.
I remember seeing that about Logan, like, trashing his religion, which is something you, in my opinion, should never do. Should never trash anyone for any of their beliefs. Unless they're entirely unreasonable, but obviously, you know, it's not that unreasonable to believe in something.
George never had the chance to refine his interviewing skills to the same degree as Logan and Mike, which is only accentuated by his seating position to the right of the guest, making it much harder for George to engage in the conversation.
It always seemed weird to me too. This whole thing seems like they're always interviewing him. Having that extra guest just doesn't make any sense to me. It makes sense to have one primary host like Logan, and then, like old school, you either have like a talking dummy, like an animatronic dummy like Craig Ferguson, or you have like an extra guy like Conan O'Brien. You just have another guy sitting to the right of him that's just kind of there for comedic relief or whatever. But I guess it's just a fucking dumb podcast, though. It's just like a lame podcast. It's not really about making good content or interviewing people effectively. It's more so just about making money.
I need to know more about you. Like, how did you figure out that, like, this entertainment world was your calling?
That's what I was gonna say.
I said it, so.
But I was gonna say.
But I said it.
No, it's good. It's good.
I was already funnier than the kids around me, so I was like, I could tell the joke that they're gonna make fun of me, but even better. And I made it about myself.
That's weird.
So I was like making fun of myself, like really, really self-deprecated myself.
Yeah, that is bragging about self-deprecating. That's ironic.
On episode 346 with Shaquille
I love Big Shaq.
George was slapped in the face with a bit of a reality check.
Literally,
for the first 11 minutes of the podcast, George didn't say a single word,
funniest people,
leading Shaq to confront him about his lack of input.
Hold on, you ain't gonna ask me a question? Oh, damn.
He waits. He likes to wait until he's got the... Bro, listen, man, I read the Bible a lot when they talk about David and Goliath. I've never seen a giant, and so like I'm literally just, I'm a little taken.
You've been sitting over here for 30 minutes, and that's all you can freaking say?
That's pretty embarrassing.
After making the excuse that he couldn't hear due to his headphones, George sat quietly for another 11 minutes, after which he was scolded again.
What the fuck are you doing here? Ask a question, jeez. He's your partner?
He's the newest.
You might want to give him his 2-week notice.
Oh, that's rough, dude.
That's the question, dude.
Honestly,
jeez. You're just sitting here like a bobblehead going.
Yeah. No, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you because I couldn't hear, but...
That's really embarrassing. I feel like Shaq's being a little rude there, but at the same time, deserved. He's fucking Shaq. And also, that's George Janko, the third guy on the Impulsive pod. So he seems like a nice guy, though. Let's be real. Not as cool as Shaq, but definitely a nice, all right guy.
Dent in George's confidence.
feel
He'd
like
already
this isn't
joked
that
about
bad
how
so far.
difficult it was to be the third host
isn't
in the
that bad so
past.
far.
It's hard to be the third person on a podcast with
wouldn't
two
say.
very vocal main hosts.
And after the Shaquille O'Neal
It is hard being the third
episode, it
person.
was obvious that George's confidence had fallen off a cliff.
And then recently, I've been just getting really nervous that I'm not doing well enough for the podcast anymore.
I can relate to that because like there's a need to perform for sure. And it's such a large podcast. There's so many eyes. It's Logan Paul. It's the other guy, fucking Adam Sandler, whatever the his name is. That makes sense. I don't really get nervous about performing because I don't really fucking care about what people think about me as long as it's the truth. Obviously, I get mad whenever people are like, "Oh, you're a boozorg from Zeta Reticuli." That pisses me off. That kind of shit. But if it's the truth, I don't give a. If you ever say something mean and there's like a heart comment, it means it's the truth. And I agree with you. Yeah, so maybe George could take a little chill pill, relax a little bit. Or he's gone now, I guess, so never mind.
It began with Bobby taking a little jab at George by
Bobby,
suggesting that Mike was
take a
cooler.
jab at
You have everything.
George.
Cool friends.
So
You have,
this,
you have cool friends like this guy?
what about him?
Yet things became a little more contentious
funny.
when George took it from fun to borderline aggressive.
Some people just don't like sucking dick. Now turn around and know the wisdom I give you.
Whoa.
Before displaying more arrogance just a few minutes later.
How about you?
First of all, what's my name?
Sensing George's clear insecurity,
kinda weird.
Bobby began to roast George whenever he got the opportunity.
You have a
That does seem
girlfriend?
aggressive.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Is that your girlfriend? Without fame, you wouldn't get that.
Although the ultimate roast would come after George went on a 2.5-minute monologue about the struggles he faced in his life.
And I don't mean this in a cocky way, but like, dude, this put me on a very strong map. And it made a lot of my avenues blow up. So I'm
It's
very
like that's-
blessed, but I didn't know I was going to be here. So
It's
for
like
me-
that's. You done? It was just a long monologue.
He was just waiting.
And let me just say something. I loved what you were saying. It was just very long.
That's
Yeah,
all.
usually- yeah.
That's usually.
But
He's
you know, I got
embarrassed.
what you're saying, and you really inspired
Look,
me.
his
George.
face turned red.
Can I say something?
First of all, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Do not
Okay,
touch
my
me.
bad, my bad. Yeah, we just.
Okay, that's weird because the first thing I saw him touch him first and rotate his chair around after the de-essing meme or whatever. That's sort of weird to get mad at someone unless it's a joke too. I really don't know. I've
Writers to edit that
Asperger's.
down. Like if we had a staff of writers, they'd be like, "Yeah, we'll cut that." But
I'm sorry.
essentially, it was a really good monologue.
Usually when I do my comedy, I don't have writers in the room. I actually write my own stuff.
Okay, I can tell.
Dude, that's funny. That's funny. I love Bobby.
What I'm saying is that
better
when
when
you
I
were
was
talking, we were here for that 30 minutes.
Eventually
bullying
leading
him a
George
little
to
bit. This is
walk off
kinda
the
sad.
podcast, get in an Uber, and leave without saying goodbye. The episode received comments such as, "It's impossible to call yourself a comedian if you can't handle being slaughtered by other comedians, especially the Captain
Yeah,
Bob
come on,
himself.
Captain Bob, let it
George
happen."
tells everyone he's going to be the best comedian alive, but he can't take a joke from the legendary Bobby Lee. It's like a badge of honor. How does he think most comedians communicate with each other?
They're really nice. We give each other back rubs and then we jerk each other off into each other's. I would recommend bleeping the last section.
I've always thought George thinks he's funnier than he really is. And when people roast him,
I
he
would
gets
agree
super
with
butthurt like this generation. Things became
generation.
worse for
But isn't
George
he,
after
like,
this video by
35?
Jamari gained well over 1 million views, leading George to address the criticism in
Wannabe
the following
comedian.
episode of Impulsive.
What did Jamari say? Wannabe comedian walks off podcast over a joke. Janko. How old is this man? 93. Okay, he's 30. So he's 3 years older than me. 4 years older than me. This dude isn't. What? I feel like that's a little old to be getting so upset over that kind of stuff. I mean, it makes sense because Logan, he's what, 24, 25, and Mike's what, 50? I guess they're all really immature now that I think about it. I mean, that is literally the Suicide Forest podcast. I don't know what the I'm talking about.
Leading George to address the criticism in the following
Leading
episode
George
of
to
Impulsive
address the
by
criticism.
arrogantly stating that he enjoyed all the hatred.
I love that people were just commenting and getting so steamed. It made me realize, like, oh, I
So
really
steamed.
don't care. I want it. I want to be in their
You do
heads
care,
more. Like,
bro.
I like it.
Love how George is
weird.
trying to act like he's not heard about this when he had to leave the pod because
That's f***ing funny.
a week after George
That's
responded,
rude.
Logan appeared on Bobby Lee's podcast Tiger Belly, where Bobby took a moment to talk about George's behavior.
What he did was unprofessional.
Cringe host, I don't like
was
Delilah.
a guest.
Just kidding,
He
I love her.
walked out on a guest. If this guy right here walked out on a guest, he would be reprimanded.
Before roasting him yet again.
If you had walked out, right, it would have been like, oh, it's over. But him walking out was just kind of like, let's keep going.
Bobby and Logan then decided that they should get George on a call,
Can you give me his number?
You want to settle this right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna call him right now.
leading Bobby and George to fix their relationship.
I want to apologize for my behavior on your podcast.
Bobby Lee, you shut your mouth. I'm apologizing to you. I left you. You were our guest.
I want to pull back my apology then.
However, it was obvious that the
That's
whole thing
funny.
had caused a serious fracture between George and Logan, becoming most obvious when they get into an almost hour-long argument, only 5 episodes after the Bobby Lee
5
podcast.
episodes.
I know people that hate me, that treat me better about my faith than you, and you're my best friend. One that really hurt me is you told me I need a therapist because I believe in Jesus. That one hurt me.
No, I didn't. I said you need a therapist because Jesus isn't quite doing it for you,
No, you
which
didn't.
is
No, you
which is
didn't.
true.
No, you didn't.
Dude, is this just like Hollywood, I'm rich now, and I am going to be rich soon. Shut up! Therapy, Jesus, therapy. Work in the mines for 3 weeks, and shut the f up and never talk again.
You're getting angry because Daddy's getting fired up. Daddy's getting fired up about Logan Paul and George Janko. Monkey.
My attitude towards you on that episode and my belittlement of your beliefs was not appropriate at all.
However, George seemed to realize that his days on Impulsive were numbered, as he'd create his own podcast before clickbaiting the first episode with the title, Why George Janko is Not on Impulsive, implying that he'd left the group. George used the video to explain that this hadn't really happened.
Obviously, I'm still on Impulsive, guys. For any of you guys that are like, oh, their beef
that guy
situation,
over there?
and now he's starting his own like lane.
Even going so far as to say their relationship was as good as ever.
Me, Logan, and Mike are in a perfect place.
That is something also that's interesting. How many people who have left Mr. Beast who have made their own careers, which there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. You should be able to do whatever you want. You leave BuzzFeed, you should be able to do whatever you want. Let's see if George Janko is actually doing whatever he wants, though. He interviewed Chris D'Elia? Okay, these aren't bad views. God cured my anxiety and depression. He's doing what he loves, it seems like. He's getting good views, doing what he loves. It's respectable.
You don't give a shit about this show anymore, let's be honest. It's like bands that hate each other that have to get on stage every night and play for the audience. Like, yo, let's do our hit song. We don't like it. We have to sit
That's
here
not
and
true.
pretend
That's
to
not
be
true. I
friends.
like Mike. George.
Well, he's about to
You
redeem
don't say.
He's about to.
Only 3 episodes after comparing themselves to a band forced to play together, George disappeared from the show without warning.
They always have the worst sets.
On an episode of Jeff FM with Mike and Tanner Mojo, Tanner accidentally said this.
That's a
We
nice
are
little
the new
set.
Impulsive. I'm sorry.
We are. It's fun.
Y'all are having like a rebrand, like George is leaving. Like, this is it.
At around the same point in time, George unfollowed both Logan and Mike on Instagram,
And then he
which was
tweeted- is
followed
this
by
when I saw the
Impulsive
tweet?
changing their profile picture from this to this, as well as their banner from this to this. All of this had happened
dude.
silently with no input from the hosts. However, on the 26th of April 2023,
This is what I saw.
George would post to Twitter, I wasn't going to talk, but now I am, implying that some
Did he
pretty
say
heavy
anything?
stuff had gone down behind the scenes.
Like,
Replies on the
heavy
post
stuff.
encouraged George to
People
keep the
want
drama
to see.
private. Yet on the 31st of May, approximately 1 month later, another tweet was made stating, to the Impulsive fans, I'm so sorry I can't speak about things, not my choice. I do
Gag
love you guys,
order.
and for those of you
NDA.
sending me the clip of them talking shit, it's all love. I've already moved on from that toxic environment, confirming that he was no
He said
longer
he was
on
gonna
the
talk.
podcast.
But he
The
said he
post
was going to
received
talk.
replies
But he said he was going to talk though. But he didn't. That's really disappointing because I was invested to see what he had to say. TBH, just kidding. I don't give a.
George has seen some success with the George Janko
Those
show,
views aren't bad.
yet Logan hasn't been able to resist roasting George's low view count.
I love this outlet, and it exists because
That's pretty
people
good for
watch.
his
Without
subs.
people watching, I just have a show like.
Since then, George has stated that he simply wants to distance himself from Mike and Logan.
I'm at a point right now where I want distance from both of them. I don't want anything to do with it, and I just move on.
Which seems to be the best possible outcome for everybody involved.
As if I give a. I'm just kidding, guys. That's really interesting, though. I love Bobby Lee, and that's why I clicked on it. I just, I love all the comedians, and it's just a funny idea. Whatever. Hopefully he's doing all right. Hopefully Logan's doing all right. I can imagine getting lectured about emotional intelligence from Logan Paul.